All right, let's jump right in. How do you solve a problem that everyone sees differently? Today we're digging into how a major rail operator tackled a challenge we can all relate to, cleanliness, and pulled off an incredible transformation. And the secret? Well, it wasn't more mops or bigger cleaning crews, it was data. This is a story about making the subjective objective.
I mean, really think about it. What you consider spotless, someone else might think is just okay. That was the exact problem this rail operator was facing. How on earth do you manage and improve something when everyone has a totally different idea of what success even looks like?
Well, back in 2020, that blurry subjective problem had a very specific number, 37,274. That was the average number of cleaning failure points found during their inspections. It's a huge number, and it just goes to show how big and how inconsistent the problem really was.
So first up, let's really dive into that before picture. We're going to explore the kind of chaos that happens when you don't have a clear, objective way to measure what you're doing.
This slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the old way. Supervisors with clipboards making judgment calls, which led to wildly inconsistent standards and a management style that was all about reactive firefighting. The goal, over on the right, was to completely flip that script, to move to objective data, create solid benchmarks everyone understood, and finally start managing things proactively. And believe me, this was not just some theoretical problem on a spreadsheet. The real-world consequences were pretty stark. Can you imagine one of your service lines performing 150% worse than another? That is a massive difference. On top of that, get this, less than 1% of all inspections were getting a perfect score. And critical areas like the train exteriors and those door pockets were just failing again and again. The system was fundamentally broken.
So how in the world do you fix a mess that big? Well, you have to change the way you measure it. And that brings us to the solution, a brand new digital scorecard, designed to bring some much-needed clarity and consistency to the whole process.
And the answer was this, the SmartFleet digital scorecard. Now, the key here is that this wasn't just some digital checklist. No, it was a whole new framework. It was designed to take all the guesswork out of the inspections by giving every single inspector the exact same tool to measure, track, and manage cleaning quality, all in real time. And you can really see the level of detail they went into here. The scorecard broke down the entire train into 6 core areas, with a grand total of 49 specific key performance indicators, or KPIs. All of a sudden, nothing was left to chance. Every single critical part of that train was now being measured in exactly the same way.
The process itself was so simple but so powerful. It's really just 3 steps. First, an inspector uses a mobile tool to go through those 49 items. Second, and this part is brilliant, if they find a defect, it's not just a check mark. It gets assigned points based on how severe it is. A small thing might be 5 points, but a critical failure could be 100. And finally, all of this data is captured instantly, ready for the team to analyze.
Okay, now we get to the really exciting part. We've seen the problem, we've seen the solution, let's look at the results. Because honestly, they are nothing short of dramatic. 88%. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the headline number. Over 5 years, this new data-driven approach led to an 88% reduction in cleaning defects. That is a massive, undeniable improvement that just speaks for itself.
This table really shows the journey, year by year. They started with over 37,000 failure points, right? They cut that by more than half in the first year, and then did it again in the second. But what's really interesting is that little slip in 2023. Because they were tracking the data so closely, they caught it, figured out what was going on, and got right back on track, cutting failures by another 50% the next year.
And hey, remember that crazy 150% performance gap between the 2 service lines? Well, this is where the story gets really powerful. Look at 2020. You see that huge difference between line A and line B? Now look at 2024. The bars are almost identical. The system didn't just improve the overall score, it created consistent, standardized quality across the board.
So, what was the secret sauce? What really made this work so well? You know, it wasn't just about the cool new tech. It was about the principles behind it all. Let's break down the actual blueprint for this success.
It really came down to these 4 key factors, and they all work together. It all started with systematic data collection. That's what got rid of the subjectivity. That data then allowed them to target their biggest problem areas with laser focus, which in turn helped build a whole new culture of performance management. And of course, the technology was the glue that held it all together and made it possible.
But you know,
What they didn't do is just as important. They avoided some really common traps. They kept the scorecard simple and easy to use, not overcomplicated. They actively managed the natural resistance to change from their staff with good training. And this is a big one. They avoided analysis paralysis. The data wasn't just for making fancy reports. It was for driving immediate, real-world action.
So as we start to wrap this up, it's really important to see that this story is about so much more than just getting trains clean. It's a fantastic lesson in modern management. And that right there is the real takeaway. Yeah, the trains are cleaner, 88% cleaner, which is amazing, but the truly fundamental change was cultural. The entire organization shifted from being reactive, constantly putting out fires, to being proactive and preventing them from ever starting. All of it driven by a shared, data-backed understanding of what good actually looks like.
So in the end, the scorecard wasn't just a tool to measure performance. It was the tool that created the very foundation for a culture of continuous improvement to grow. It gave everyone a shared language and the objective data they needed for that culture to finally take hold and thrive.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. This whole principle of turning the subjective into the objective, of measuring what really matters, you can apply it almost anywhere, in our jobs, our projects, even our own personal goals. So what part of your world is just waiting for its scorecard?